This is a really wild case.
It's about a family, essentially. All of it really centers around the mother figure in the family, and that's Sandra Peterson. She has a bunch of kids, 6 children, in fact, all girls, which are named Brandy, Lena, Robin, Jeannie, Rachel, and Rosie. As soon as she would move in with a guy or marry a guy, Sandy would get bored after a year or two and then start having an affair with another guy. Still, they viewed her, though, as a loving and caring mom who only wanted what was best for them. Lena Chapin was born on August 29th, 1985. And even from a young age, she was outgoing and confident, but also very stubborn and bossy with her sisters.
So Sandy's first husband was Robert Chapin. He was Lena's father, and she left him before meeting the man who would become her second husband, Albert McCullough. Albert adored Sandy. She was warm and charming. She told people what they wanted to hear, and they couldn't help falling in love with her. She was just a charmer. And he also loved her kids. But then Sandy started to have an affair, and not with just anybody. Actually, Albert's brother, Gary. After that, Albert told his brother that Sandy was nothing but trouble and that they should just both stay away from her. But Gary did not listen to his brother's advice, and they decided to go and start a new life together. So on May 22nd, 1996, Sandy moved her kids back to Missouri to live on his farm in Cassville.
And together, all of them lived on the farm for about 3 years. And that was as long as Sandy could stay with one man. Because in March of 1999, Sandy started having an affair with a man named Christopher Klemp. Sandy also caused serious financial problems. She stopped making the house payments without telling him, and he discovered he was on the brink of foreclosure. On May 14th, investigators found Gary's truck abandoned on a dead-end road near Pulaski Field in Berry County. Sheriff Mick Epperly asked Sandy to take a polygraph, and without skipping a beat, she replied, "You find a body, and I'll take a polygraph." When they talked to Sandy's children, they were hostile toward the police and fiercely defended their mom, especially Lena. Investigators found evidence that Chris had tried to hire a man named Steve Turner to kill Gary days before he disappeared. In April 2000, about a year after Gary went missing, Sandy was granted a dissolution of marriage from Gary, and her and Chris got married the following month.
So Lena was in high school at the time and living with her mom and her younger sisters. She was working multiple jobs and trying to save up money. Her sisters, Brandy and Robin, were worried about her. She started partying all the time and eventually started and when she was 17, she ended up confiding in her boyfriend that she knew what happened to Gary McCullough, and it was eating her up inside. Her boyfriend told her that she absolutely had to go to the police. Gary's family just deserved to know, but she was too scared and would only agree to talk directly with his brother, her ex-stepfather, Albert. And Albert ended up secretly recording the conversation. And after talking for a while, he asked her directly who killed Gary, and Lena said, "Mom." Gary was sitting on the couch eating some scrambled eggs when Sandy walked in holding a loaded gun and shot him 3 times in the head. I mean, she was just a kid doing what her mom told her to do at the time, and she feared that her family would be ruined by all of this. He ended up giving the recording of Lena's confession to the sheriff, confident that they finally had proof that Sandy murdered Gary.
So about 4 months after Lena's confession to Albert, she gave birth to a baby boy, Coulter. And after that, Lena lived only for Coulter. She had a serious boyfriend named Jason Bryant, and they eventually got engaged. And for the first time in her life, she was financially independent, and she didn't have to rely on her mom to take care of her, which was a huge threat to Sandy. Gary was officially declared deceased in 2005. On June 26, 2006, his daughters filed a civil lawsuit for wrongful death against Sandy and Chris, alleging that Lena was an accessory after the fact. Albert was hopeful that Lena could get immunity for testifying against her mother and Chris. Denton County Sheriff's deputies delivered the court summons to Sandy and Chris on July 7, 2006. And Lena had been subpoenaed to testify against Sandy, but no one seemed to know where she was. Robin went to Lena and Jason's apartment in Steelville to look for her, and it turned out he hadn't seen Lena in months. After she disappeared, Sandy told Jason that Lena left him and that she just ran off to Florida with some guy in a black 2000 Chevy Cavalier. She also left Coulter with her mom and didn't say when or even if she'd be back.
Which she never would have done that.
That is, yeah. That's just a blatant lie.
Robin remembered what she had seen outside her bedroom window so many years ago. Her mom and Chris struggling to carry something. She had a terrible feeling that her mother had done something similar to Lena.
Sandy, however, refused to cooperate with the investigation at all. Once Lena was gone, Sandy filed abandonment charges against Lena. And when she failed to show up for court, the judge handed over custody of Coulter to Sandy. In July of 2013, a judge heard the wrongful death lawsuit filed by Gary's daughters, April Chandler and Joy McCullough. The jury deliberated for less than an hour and reached a unanimous verdict, which is rare in a civil case. Even without a body, they found Sandy and Chris liable for Gary's death and ordered them to pay $8 million to his daughters. But in many cases where this happens, no money has ever been paid out. But after all of this happened, in 2014, Sandy divorced Chris. 4 years later, in 2018, she remarried for the 5th time to a man named Joe Wink. According to Brandy, Sandy changed Coulter's last name and birth certificate. She also burned all the pictures she had of Lena, Robin, and Brandy and told her younger daughters to never speak of their sisters in front of Coulter.
That's terrible. Literally just trying to erase it from her past.
Investigators in Barry County and Dent County are still actively investigating both cases. So this is still a very active investigation, and I hope
it's active. And if you guys have any information out there, contact the Barry County Sheriff's Office at 417-847-6556. If you have information about Lena's disappearance or presumed death, you can contact the Dent County Sheriff's Office at 573-729-3241. Matthew Phelps and Lauren Hugelmeier. She was described by friends and family as being very genuine, very caring, very loving, and she was someone who was very, very close with her family. Her family was so close that they did dinner together every Tuesday night, and Matt always joined them. So the two got engaged in 2015, and they had a big engagement party, and both of their family and friends came, but it was mostly Lauren's family. But strangely enough, his own mother came, and his mom was just kind of problematic. She didn't want them to be together for some reason and just was kind of a... And then they married the following year in November of 2016. 6 months after they got married, they actually took a road trip back to Kentucky to visit Matt's family there. And during the trip, Matthew's mom was terrible to Lauren. And this was just one of the problems that Lauren and Matt were having. And it all came to a head on September 1st, 2017. That day, around 1 a.m., a call came into dispatch from Matt saying that he had woken up and found his wife covered in blood with multiple stab wounds, and that he had no idea how it happened. During that 911 call, you can hear him say that he was on a cough medicine called... He didn't even have a cold. He said that he had taken it before bed because it makes him feel good. He said that he went to sleep and had this crazy dream and then woke up to the scene of Lauren having been stabbed. So the police rush over to the scene. Investigators said they thought it was odd. Matt showed no emotion when they were there. So police then went to Lauren's parents' house to tell them what had happened, but Lauren's mom figured it out right away. I mean, it was the middle of the night. She asked them right away, "Is it Lauren?" And they said yes. She said, "Is she dead?" They said yes. And then she asked them, "Was it Matt?" Police also noted that he was completely coherent when talking to them. He did not seem like someone who was still messed up from the cough medicine. They ended up actually drawing his blood and testing it, and it turns out that the amount of cough syrup he had was more than a normal dose, but not enough to make you incoherent enough to murder someone without knowing it. So as police are trying to figure out motive, they look more into the couple's history and they start seeing some red flags right away. First of all, some of their friends came forward and told investigators that they were having some major financial trouble at the time of Lauren's death. Then investigators found out that the night before Lauren was killed, on August 31st, a woman came to their house. Matt had come home from work. Lauren was cooking dinner and talking on the phone to her sister Beth, when suddenly a girl named Valerie came to the door. It's kind of confusing exactly what she said because Lauren was on the phone at the time and was kind of confused, but Matt just looked back at her as he was talking to Valerie at the door and said like, "Hey honey, I'm gonna go out with Valerie real fast because she needs my help with something." And Lauren was like, "What do you mean? I just made dinner for you." And Beth can hear all of this on the phone, that she did not want Matt to leave with this girl, but he did anyway. Lauren had actually expressed to friends and family a few times that she was considering leaving Matt, but he was extremely controlling and she felt like she just couldn't. While they were interrogating Matt, they ended up finding out that he was married before, and he told them that Not only was he married, but he was also abusive to his past wife unknowingly. Pretty quickly, on October 5th, 2018, the trial came to a close. Matt ended up taking a plea deal to committing first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And no one showed up for Matt at his sentencing. Nobody. No family, no one. Lauren's family to this day are just devastated that they don't have her. Lauren's mom said that Lauren was a beautiful girl inside and out, and that the actions of Matthew James Phelps have forever changed her. Mark Winger and Donna Winger. In the 80s, she was set up on a blind date with a man named Mark Winger. Mark Allen Winger. He also came from a really nice Jewish family and valued family, and right away she was impressed with Mark. So eventually they got married on March 4th, 1998 in Hollywood, Florida. And as soon as they got married, their plan was to start a family right away. But unfortunately, as time went on and they kept trying, Donna was unable to get pregnant. Actually, one day Donna was at her doctor's office and he brought up that he had this young patient who is pregnant and wanted to find loving parents to adopt her baby. Of course, Donna was thrilled and said yes and felt like she was meant to be this child's mother. The baby was born on May 27th, 1995, Bailey Elizabeth Winger. But only 3 months after Bailey was adopted, Donna was murdered in her home on a Tuesday afternoon on August 29th, 1995. So when police get to the scene, it looks pretty clear what happened, right? There's 2 bodies on the floor. There's an intruder who has a gunshot wound. There's a gun. There is a hammer, and it was actually Mark's hammer. There's Donna, who's on the ground face down. It definitely looked like this man may have broken into the house, attacked Donna, maybe it was something personal, and that Mark had come out and shot him in self-defense. Exactly what Mark said. Now, one detective in this case is absolutely crucial, and that's Detective Charlie Cox. He was one of the first officers on the scene, and even though it was a very chaotic scene and Mark was hysterical, he felt like right away he had a good idea of what probably happened. And then he walked over to this man. He took out his wallet to identify him and found out that this was a man named Roger Lee Harrington. He's 27 years old, and Charlie Cox actually knew this guy, Roger. They found Roger's car outside, parked the wrong way on the street. And when they looked in the car, they actually found this little note that said Mark Winger, and then it had their address and 4:30 p.m. So at this point, they're kind of wondering if Mark knew who this guy was, and Detective Cox asks him if he knew this man. And that's when Mark said, "Is his name Roger?" They said, "Yes, his name is Roger." And he said, "Oh my God, that's the guy who's been harassing us all week." They hired a shuttle service called BART Transportation, and their driver was Roger. Donna and the baby had a 2-hour drive from the airport back home, and she had a really weird experience with Roger. He made her very uncomfortable and upset the entire drive. So as soon as Detective Cox hears about this, it all makes sense. Roger clearly had some type of obsession with Donna. He stalked her for the last week, and then he finally came in and attacked. Everyone was heartbroken over the loss of Donna, especially Mark. He ended up hiring a live-in nanny, and her name was Rebecca Schultz. She was incredibly caring and nurturing with Bailey and absolutely adored her. Turns out that Bailey was gonna have a sibling soon. That's right, guys. Mark started a relationship with his nanny, Rebecca, and got her pregnant very, very quickly after losing his wife. But there was one person who did not like Rebecca and did not want her in Mark's life, and that was Deanne Schultz. She thought it was a little too weird how easily she slid into their life. So 14 months after losing Donna, Mark and Rebecca went to Maui to elope. They got married in a private ceremony in October 1996, and they didn't even tell their families that they were doing it. That December, Mark decided to sell the home that he and Donna owned so that he and Rebecca could have a new start somewhere else. And eventually they had 3 more kids, Anna, Maggie, and Ben. But then everything changed in October of 1998. Deanne went to the police, and she had a secret that she had been keeping since Donna died, which at this point it had been 3.5 years since her death. It turns out that Deanne and Mark were actually having an affair. She said that Mark actually told her once that everything could be easier and they could be together if Donna just died. And not only that, he tried to convince Deanne to have a part in it. And as she starts explaining all of this to detectives, it all starts to click. When Mark found out about Donna's horrible ride home from the airport with this guy Roger, He saw it as the perfect opportunity. He told Deanne about it. He actually told her that he had a plan to frame him and that all he needed to do was get this guy to his house. And as they started re-looking at the crime scene, it was pretty obvious that what Mark had described happening could not have happened. Then it turns out that police had actually interviewed Roger's roommate, Susan Collins, who had told them that the day before Donna's murder, a man called Roger and told him to meet him somewhere, and that, he had written it down on a piece of paper. But it didn't go with their narrative at the time, so this statement was completely dismissed. But knowing this now, it confirmed that Mark had asked Roger to come to their house that day. Roger wasn't an intruder. He wasn't a stalker, as far as we know. He was invited to their house that day as a guest to be murdered. So all of this started to slowly trickle out to the media, and people were shocked. Everyone started rethinking this whole story. The trial started in May of 2002, which was nearly 7 years after the murders. During the whole thing, Rebecca was an absolute wreck. And after everything was said and done, they decided that Mark Winger was guilty on all counts. And immediately, Donna's family felt so bad for Roger's family, for everything that he had been through. To this day, Mark claims that he's innocent. But that's gonna be it for me today, guys. I hope you're having a great day. Stay safe out there.